We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.
All right. You know what I love about Granite State Live is, the podcast keeps getting older, but I feel like I'm staying the same age. All right. In the seat tonight, we don't have Keith Hansen with us tonight, the unapologetic, contrarian conservative, but you do have me, the Blue Collar Intellectual, host of the Blue Collar Intellectual podcast. My name is Julian, and we're going to be digging in deep on Iran tonight, along with we're going to get into Iran. We're getting into some Israel-U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, the backlash, the social media crap, all the fun stuff, right? And then our final guest for the night is going to be we're going to have Col Robert Maness on the show. We're also going to have Nils Grevillius. I know I just messed that up. We're going to have Nils Grevillius, Los Angeles-based private investigator and private detective who worked with the Pinkerton organization, is involved in clandestine operations, both as a contractor and in the service as a soldier, to discuss the assassination on the senator. So, you remember that story. I know it got covered up in the news because of all the stuff that's been going on nationally, or internationally, I should say, within the past week or so, at least since Thursday. But it's still something we should get into, so we're going to get into it. It's been a fantastic week so far. We're getting right to the end of Men's Mental Health Month, Strong Dad June. On my podcast, we had two guests on that were absolutely fire in the last few weeks. If you haven't caught them, go to Ram TV Live, where you can catch all of our episodes, Granite State Live, Blue Collar Intellectual. You can catch everything all at once. You have Drew Allen Show. Enjoy, share, like, retweet. If you don't like it, don't tell anybody. I'm just messing with you. But, as we get into it today, I wanted to get into there's an excellent clip from, if I remember correctly, a member of Parliament, and he was given a rundown of who the real enemy is in this whole Iran debacle. And, if you listen to a lot of the influencers, there's a rise of anti-Semitism. And if you listen to us before, we were talking about how the argument regarding Israel's actions always seems to devolve down to the Jews run everything and Jew-spiracies. Yeah, we don't play that over here. We don't do it's them, it's those people. Yeah, we don't do that. What we are going to get into is who the real enemies are. And guess what? It's not the average person. Let's play that clip.
Let me make it very clear, as an Iranian diaspora member, targeting IRGC bases is not targeting the Iranian people. It is not an attack on Iran. It is targeting the very people who terrorize the people of Iran.
He said it like it is. Now, that clip is a little bit longer as he goes into why they're the real enemy and why we should be watching out for them. But the reality is it's like I've been saying all along, right? It doesn't, everybody's trying to describe, in reference to America, I always say, we're all trying to describe the color of the boot on our neck from our perspective. And my job isn't to convince you that your perspective is wrong, but to help you remove the boot from your neck, right? Well, it works worldwide. We're all victims of the decisions of those within our government make that don't necessarily align with the population. About 80% of the Iranian population are more moderate Muslims who want to live their daily lives in peace. They want economic prosperity. They want education. They want the same stuff that a lot of people want, right? And they've been trying to revolt. They've been trying to hold their government accountable, but they just don't have the resources to, which is why, you see some people calling for regime change war. And I bet the Iranian people would love regime change, and we've been in spaces on X talking to a bunch of Iranians who've lived in Iran, came over here recently, or came over here maybe 5-10 years ago, and they're sick of the fighting. They're sick of the endless wars. They're sick of the constantly being in Israel. And the reality is, we've sent money, we sent treasure, we sent people to Iran, and that money always ends up going towards their extracurricular activities of funding terrorism around the world and in the region. Now, I'm a big fan of challenging the foreign policy establishment within the United States. I don't believe that the Beltway's version of policy and thinking actually leads to what we really want it to lead to. I don't think it leads us down the right path towards solutions, which is what this is all about, right? Where, this podcast, like the Blue Collar Intellectual podcast, is about solutions. At the end of this, we'd like to give everybody a good kick in the behind in order to get to brass tacks, actionable things that we can do in our daily lives in order to make the country better. And the reality is that I don't view the foreign policy establishment in D.C. as making the average person's life better. I don't view them as getting results, because every election cycle we end up having to do the same foreign policy two-step that we always do. I've always said that foreign policy devolves down to a measuring contest, right? Foreign policy revolves down to a measuring contest where, and I'm not going to say what we're measuring, but we're measuring nuclear buttons, right? Whose big red button is bigger? When I tell you that there's a red line in the sand and you should not cross that red line, when you cross that red line, I have to respond with whatever force I threatened you with. Otherwise, for the next 4 years, you're going to be challenging me. That it is what it is. That's how it works. And I don't think we've been taking this seriously. That's why. Now, when you look at the discourse online, you had a lot of people who challenged the White House and challenged Donald Trump over his handling of Israel. They said that the strikes were wrong. And we're going to have a guest on tonight. His name is Anton Chaitkin, who's going to take the position that Trump's his actions were irresponsible. We're going to take the position that his actions were irresponsible and that they lead us towards a catastrophic result, right? Nuclear war. We got to be weary of what's going to happen when we engage the bad guys as if they are bad guys, and we stop holding their hands and giving them the things that they want. So we're going to get into that. But in the meantime, we have quite a few clips. We have some of Donald Trump's own comments and some of his own posts on True Social as they happen. As you may have been paying attention last week, you had 3 precision strikes on nuclear targets. You had Iran and Israel exchanging shots at each other. And as I said on the Blue Collar Intellectual podcast earlier, you had Israel targeting specific military strikes, their launchers, their nuclear facilities, their critical national security infrastructure in Iran, and you had Iran targeting civilian populations within Israel. The two are not the same, and we cannot look at Iran, who's the number one state sponsor of terror worldwide, and look at Israel as if they're the same thing. The fact is that they're not. And anybody telling you that they are is lying to you. And I'm not a fan of lying to you. I think there are things that, are true, and there are things that are false. And the people who are trying to, specifically the argument that, this is no different than North Korea. They are different than North Korea. Vastly different reasons why the two countries want to go to war, vastly different reasons why they hate the United States, vastly different nuclear and military capabilities. The reality is that you can't compare the two. And I was making this conversation. We were having a great space with Sonny Johnson earlier, and we're making this, trying to discuss this. The reality is this. You can take this issue with Iran all the way back to 1979 when they took hostages, right? You can look at how they engage in the world stage and how every dollar we send them ends up going towards funding terrorists abroad. So Iran, unlike North Korea, fights their wars through proxies. And we don't. We've been I can't really say that. We don't to the degree that they do. Okay? So we need to be honest about these situations. We need to understand that this isn't what we're being fed. And as I'm a big critic of the military industrial complex, there are a conglomerate of different interests that go into each military engagement and each reason why we get into combat in the first place, right? Throughout, Iran was an inevitable thing. This isn't a country that you can just hand a nuclear weapon and, hey, how's it going, Johnny Hayes? So Iran is not some, choir boy that you can hand nuclear capability to, and they're going to use it for their own energy benefits or infrastructure benefits or so on and so forth. Every time they've tried to enrich uranium, it's always for the purpose of weaponizing it. And they're not doing it just so they can be taken seriously on the world stage. You got to understand the dynamics of when you have a nuclear weapon. Yes, you're doing it so you can be taken seriously, but there's also a deterrent that takes place with nuclear weapons. So what they're doing, what they really want is, and yes, am I saying that they're going to use a nuclear weapon on the United States or that they're going to use it on Israel? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they'll use the fact and the threat that they have nuclear weapons as a deterrent from us attacking them when they do continue to engage in proxy wars and funding terrorists abroad. So when it comes to the sanctions, they'll threaten to use nuclear weapons against Israel or in the Middle East. And you also got to understand the region that we're talking about, right? The Saudis, the Syrians, the UAE, Jordan, all the neighbors in the Middle East have a serious problem with Iran getting nuclear weapons. As a matter of fact, they've all said if Iran gets nuclear weapons, we don't feel safe in the region with Iran having nuclear weapons. If they get nuclear weapons, we're going to get nuclear weapons because we can't allow this to continue. We can allow this to escalate. Iran didn't have nukes. Never have they. A lot worse. Let's see. Israel never get. I can't read that. I can't read that. That's not an English sentence.
No, it's not. And I'm going to help you out here because I can read a little bit more. And I think at the end it says Israel has never let anyone inspect their weapons. So.
Oh, Israel's never let anybody inspect their weapons.
Yes.
Why would I have a problem with inspecting Israel's weapons? Israel's not going around trying to blow up, is not chanting death to America. Israel's not chanting death to America, and they're not the number one state sponsor of terror. I don't have an issue with Israel having nuclear weapons. As a matter of fact, we have sold nuclear weapons to Israel. We have armed them to the teeth, and we have been doing so since their inception. So I don't know what that's supposed to accomplish. Iran and Israel are not the same. They're not the same. Israel uses their nuclear power for medical. You talk about Israel. Israel uses their nuclear.
I think she's referring to Iran.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. So, yes, it is okay for Israel to have nuclear weapons because the vast majority of the countries in the Middle East have made it very clear that they would like to, under previous regimes before multiple regime change wars, and the terrorists in the region have also made it very clear that they would like to wipe Israel off the map. The Iranian government has been very explicit about that for decades, that they would like to wipe Israel off the map. And as a matter of fact, every time Israel has taken a posture of peace and defense, they've been attacked. Now, I'm not saying Israel has not also been a bad actor, because I looked at I asked AI earlier today how many peace deals, how many ceasefires Israel has violated. Well over 900 ceasefires Israel has struck first. Now, the reason for that is Israel has a standing doctrine that if they believe there's an imminent threat against Israel, they're not going to wait for you to strike. They're going to strike you first. And I take the same doctrine of, if I think you're about to punch me in the face, I'm not going to wait to allow it to connect or for you to swing. I'm going to hit you. I'm going to knock you out first. What was that last comment from Julian McEachern?
There you go.
Well, you need to look up some info. Yeah, I've been researching info for, my entire life. It's kind of my background is Homeland Security, anti-terrorism. I'm sorry to tell you, but yeah, this is one of the rare occasions where, yeah, I'm okay with surgical strikes. Okay, that my contention is, one, I have an issue with regime change wars. Right, I don't want to be going into Iran and backing the change of a regime. If the people in Iran want to fight for a regime change within their own country, by all means, go ahead and fight. Take out the dictators and the people who are putting their boot on your neck. By all means. I'm not a huge fan of Bibi Netanyahu. I'm not a huge fan of nation building. I'm not a huge fan of constantly being involved in everybody else's bullshit. Honestly, I don't care about Israel. I don't care about Iran. I don't care about any country, not Russia, not Ukraine, not any country on the planet. All I care about are Americans and American citizens, and to the degree that we're protecting American interests. And if Iran hadn't constantly spent the last few decades chanting death to America, I wouldn't give a damn that they had nuclear weapons. I wouldn't give a damn if they wanted to proliferate uranium for medical purposes. I wouldn't care. I honestly wouldn't care. But when the entire region, now, when I served overseas, I got to meet the Yemenis, I got to meet the Saudis, the Syrians, I got to meet the people who live in Iraq, I got to meet the people who live in Iraq, I got to meet people who live in Jordan, I got to meet Pakistanis, I got to meet Palestinians. And I've been all over the world, and I've been all over the country, 48 states and 30 countries. I won't go to Alaska because it's cold, and I won't go to Hawaii because it's socialist. Even though they have hot weather, it's not good enough. It's not good enough for me. I'm all set with socialist states. However, every single one of them has told me that the government of Iran is a radical government that means to do harm to their neighbors. They mean to keep proliferating terrorism worldwide. They are not just innocuous actors that have nothing to do with the United States. This is not the same as Iraq. And to be honest, I was against regime change in Iraq, even though I was serving in combat over in Iraq. I don't think we should have replaced Saddam. I think we should have left him in the region as a stabilizing force. I think we made a bad decision there. And I say the same when it comes to regime change in almost every Middle Eastern country. Most of the time, I think it's a bad decision. I think we end up propping up people who don't have the authority to properly command their country, or we end up propping up the radicals that we end up having to go fight in another couple of decades. It is what it is.
Hey, Julian, that's just wanted to invite Joanne. Joanne says she can't watch this BS anymore. So we invite Joanne to give us a call at 833-603-8255. 833-603-8255. We would love to listen to her idea of what she's saying there. Or, you know.
Oh, most definitely. We have no problem with having a conversation, contradictory viewpoints. We can just be respectful towards each other. We don't have to, make it personal. As long as we're having good, rational conversations about policy and what's actually transpiring, and it doesn't devolve into, nonsense or, Jew-spiracy theories, because I don't do that here.
And guess what? This is one of the very few times you're probably going to see me in in camera there while I'm doing all this. So I don't want you to feel that you're by yourself. So, but
I was feeling lonely for a moment.
I know, it's just yeah. But anyway, what I want to say is. It's nothing controversial, actually. It's just about the way we have seen information develop throughout our lifetimes, and how people report wars. Obviously, I was born during the Vietnam War years, and so I don't remember anything. But after that, I remember how we went from Grenada, Panama, and to the first Gulf War with embedded journalists. And then we went into Iraq, Afghanistan, and now you're seeing the war being, or this event being reported by citizens via social media, and which is a great thing. But at the same time, now that AI it's something that is developing very quickly. You can see that there's a lot of bad agencies out there, or bad elements in which they start putting out their AI stuff just to try to drive their narrative. And not only that, unfortunately, the people don't do research. They just see something and go, "Oh my God, it's true, and they keep repeating the same mantra, the same erroneous thing that they saw once or twice on social media.
Yep. Unfortunately, the Iranian government was actually using their X page to use AI created images to show that they had successful attacks on infrastructure within Israel. And what they were actually showing was blown up parking lots and stuff from previous engagements that had nothing to do with Israel. Now, some rockets did actually land in Israel and did hit some targets, but they did target civilian populations, and they actually did target some actual, some population centers. They hit business buildings and stuff. They did take out a couple hospitals too. That is not the same as Israel hitting, critical military infrastructure. Now, I think to Trump's credit, we were absolutely certain that the U.S. was not going to be involved in this, and they kept it really, really hush-hush, and then all of a sudden 3 surgical strikes on nuclear sites. And, every election cycle you have this happen, right? Every election cycle you have a despotic government, usually Iran, sometimes North Korea, tests the incoming administration, and they challenge them. Now, Russia and China often act as use these countries as proxies and their despotic dictators as proxies in order to test the new incoming administration. And when Trump got tested in his first administration, he dropped to Moab on Syria, made it very, very clear that when he says he's going to do something, he's going to respond with force. That red line, once you cross it, there will be a forceful response. And that put the whole world on notice for the entire duration of Trump's first term that he was not to be messed with. Now, coming in after 4 years of weak Biden, asleep at the wheel, having dementia, letting the world walk all over him, trying to make peace deals with everybody while not showing any backbone and being a laughingstock on the world stage. Now you got Donald Trump back in the seat, and he makes it very clear. Look, you mess with America, you keep trying to do this, we're not allowing you to have a nuclear weapon, and he takes out their nuclear facilities. Done, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Call it a day. Trump is ready to sign a peace deal. So then he puts out, and let's put up Trump's comments on the surgical strikes, because he was tweeting like a madman on True Social this week. It was almost kind of hilarious. Trump has had a lot to say over the past week about everything going on. And of course, not everybody's been happy about it. You have everybody invoking the War Powers Act and stuff like that. And if you listen to the previous podcast, I had said, hey, I think the War Powers Act is unconstitutional. I'm just going to lay it as how it is. There was no amendment passed to change the structure of how we go about the commander-in-chief and Congress declaring war and all that stuff. We created a law whole cloth, and yeah, it was passed with an overwhelming majority, but I don't think that's the same thing. If you want to change the amendments or you want to alter the amendments and the articles in the Constitution, you should go through the amendment process. I think the country would be better off for it. But let's go ahead and throw up that... I'm reading it right now. So...
Actually, Julian, apologies, but we're gonna have to go to a short commercial, and we'll be back with our guest.
All right, we got Col Robert Maness coming up next. Tune in. United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Aciard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aciard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving Southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry. That's AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry.
Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GraniteGrok.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it. And we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for GraniteGrok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
All right. Welcome back to Granite State Live, Blue Collar Intellectual. I'm in the seat hosting. Keith Hansen couldn't be here with us this week, so I'm in the captain's chair. We have on live today, our next guest is a friend of mine, retired Colonel Rob Maness, enlisted in the Air Force in 1978, graduated from Navy Explosive Ordnance and Disposal School in 1980. He led numerous combat flying operations, was at the Pentagon during the September 11th attack. Pentagon Joint Staff and Nuclear Operations, commanded a B-1 bomber combat squadron, is a vice commander of the Air Force's. He was a vice commander of the Air Force's only airborne intelligence wing, executive for an energy corporation, Fortune 500 utility company, U.S. Senate candidate in Louisiana back in 2022 cycle as America First. He's also owns and operates Liberty Group LLC, the digital media publishing company for Rob Maness the Rob Maness Show, robmaness.com, social media channels, streaming show for his Rob Maness Show on Worldview Tube Network. He is the chairman of the Gator PAC and Veterans Leadership Fund. And that supports constitutional conservative and veteran candidates for public office. He endorsed the president and was on the Veterans Military Families Coalition for Trump, Veterans for Trump Vice President for Mississippi Conservative Coalition, Mississippi Veterans Coalition Director for Convention of States. He graduated from Harvard University's Kennedy School, the Air Command and Staff College, and U.S. College for Naval Warfare. But his greatest accomplishment, remember we're in Strong Dad June, is being a loving husband to his wife Candy, dad of 5 sons and a daughter, and the papa to 5 grandchildren. Goddamn. Nice to see you again, brother. It's been a long time.
Good to see you, Julian. How are you, man?
It's been a long time. Last time we saw each other in person was on stage at Faith and Freedom in Allen, Texas.
Yeah.
That was
Absolutely.
a long time ago. God, time flies.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So I want to thank you for coming on today. I can't wait to get into all the recent news. And, let's look at this from a logistical perspective, right? Because you commanded a B-1 bomber attack combat squadron. Tell me the ins and outs of what it takes to get from United States to Iraq, launch that surgical mission, and get back so cleanly that by the time it happened, they didn't even know that we were there.
Well, professionals, especially bomber professionals, don't use the word surgical when we're talking about airstrikes. because it's not possible. We use the words bone crushing, destroy, obliterate is a good adjective too. You might have heard that in the last few days. But seriously, though, my longest sortie in the B1 was 36 and a half hours. It was a training mission. And I only tell that to folks when I'm getting interviewed about this particular subject this week because we train to that. That's what American bomber crews train to, is to be able to fly around the world, hit a target deep in enemy territory. That's a high value target, which means the enemy is defended it the most heavily, and then off target, get out of the country and back home so we can land, turn the jet, and let the next set of crews be ready to fly more combat missions against that enemy. That's what I just described was a training mission of 36 and a half hours, but it's exactly like the combat mission, the B-2 crew. Now with the B-2, we have to give hats off to the air crews, obviously. Training for that type of mission is totally different than being a fighter pilot or a fighter backseater. We have to do all kinds of actual science in that business where you study what you can eat to keep your outputs as low as possible on a 37-hour mission, but also to be able to keep your energy up without using things like manufactured sugars and those kind of things. So we bring in all kinds of experts to talk to these crews about nutrition, about maintaining energy levels, about how to shift your circadian rhythm, what to do during the flight. We've perfected a system of how to figure out when to take naps during the flight, because there are short periods of time when you can take naps, how long the naps should be, and those kind of things. And all of that type of study goes into that. And then you have the tactical piece of it. How do you defeat the enemy's integrated air defense system? And this particular one in Iran is the Russian integrated air defense systems. The Iranians had the top of the line in some of their missile sites. So the best the Russians have to offer. The Russians train them, so they're well trained. But honestly, the last time they fired one of those missiles, they shot down an airliner taking off out of the commercial airport in Tehran a few years ago. So that was, we're not sure that their training level is very good in target identification, but they know how to operate the systems. So it's a complex IADS. It's top of the line. These targets were the most valued targets of the Iranian government. So they're the most heavily defended and protected. They're hardened and deeply buried. The Fordow facility is under at least 290 feet of layered granite and rock and aggregate, but not pure granite. That's significant because the GBU-57 bomb, the massive ordnance penetrator, the device they carried, and we put 12 of those into Fordow, by the way, 12 GBU-57, so they're 30,000 pounds each. Yeah, exactly. You're a Marine. You understand what that means, right? Yeah. Wow. Exactly. When I saw the post-strike satellite photos, that's what I said was, wow, because I've never dropped one of those, and we've only seen them in training and testing. So this was my first look at a combat 40 drop of that many, and I've only seen like one at a time. So this was the first time I'd seen post-strike photos of a mountainous, hardened, deeply buried target that had been struck by so many of these things. So we have to figure that out too. And the testing data shows, and this is all open source, I'm not revealing anything classified. The testing data shows that the GB57 in solid granite can only penetrate 10 to 40 feet deep. So I knew when I was getting interviewed Saturday night, I think it was, I knew that there was definitely the cartoon Fox News Network scheme of one and done, one B-2 bomber and 2 bombs was not going to be what was needed. It was going to have to be an air campaign style package with follow-up targets planned, and it was going to take at least 14 of these weapons to hit the target and destroy it, or to have the best possibility of destroying it. So these and the maintenance troops. Look, the B-2 fleet is 19 jets, man. Anybody that knows anything about aviation, whether it's military or civilian, knows that a 19 aircraft fleet is tiny, tiny. We got 7 platforms, fully combat mission capable, over a target, the most heavily defended target, deep in enemy territory. I mean, you can't get any deeper into Iran than this without being detected. Drop these highly complex weapons that have never been dropped in combat before. They all hit their targets. They all functioned correctly, according to the data that Secretary Hegseth and General Kane have confirmed. And they put 12 into that target and then 2 into the other deeply buried target that we had, and then followed up at Isfahan, which is the third facility they hit, with T-LAMs, which are cruise missiles fired off of submarines. And those were fired 2 hours or so before the bombers ever entered to Iranian airspace. So we pulled all that off undetected. They struck the target undetected. They left the target area in the country undetected. Usually, you've probably seen airstrikes before. Usually, if our aircraft are not detected before they hit the target, they hit the target, then all hell breaks loose with the unradar guided artillery rounds, right? Anti-aircraft artillery. That didn't even happen. That tells you how effective this air operation was. But we owe the maintenance troops, the pilots of the B-2s, and the intel folks and strike planners that put that together and then executed it flawlessly. I mean, we didn't even have a maintenance problem. Nobody got hurt. They didn't even have scratch a finger that I know of, which is amazing. To fly all the way halfway around the world and back into the world's probably most defended for that part of the world targets, and then get out, come home, and everybody gets to go to sleep at night. But the maintenance crews, they worked a miracle getting 7 jets over that target. That's an absolute miracle. They're amazing people. The intel planners, the B-2 stealth technology has to be precisely planned by the intel planners because it uses special techniques and procedures because of its radar evading characteristics and these integrated air defense systems that are highly complex and all use highly specialized and effective radars detect and track and fire on air targets coming in. So that was amazing. I mean, it's just incredible. And I haven't even talked about the deception operation. Man, I've done combat sorties from home before, and significant ones with more than one aircraft in a strike package like this, taking off from home, going to the target area, coming home, and been responsible for the deception operation. This deception operation to achieve this tactical surprise, like we did, it's the best one that's ever been executed, I think. Other than maybe the Trojan horse deception operation. I mean, it's incredible.
I think
they were
that's
able
the
to
most.
achieve that.
I think that's the most impressive part. Is over the last 2 decades, we've seen massive amounts of leaks of classified operations where somebody at the Pentagon talks or somebody within the administration talks, and it makes it out to the press. I remember, what was it, the beginning of Iraq, we know where, in Afghanistan, we know where Osama bin Laden is, we have his cell phone. I'm like, well, you don't have his cell phone now. Thank you for telling everybody he's got to ditch his cell phone.
Exactly.
Why would you tell the world that? And
exactly.
Then all of a sudden we get new leadership, and by God, Pete Hegseth, an actual war fighter in the Department of Defense, we managed to have OPSEC. Go figure.
Yeah, all the way up to and including the commander in chief, which is very rare. And I think the key to this, my best guess on it, haven't done it before, is probably it was so successful to keep it a secret because they chose the right people not to tell.
Mm-hmm.
They chose the right people not to tell. Just think about that. And the ones that are whining so much. Well, it's not just Democrats, because Republicans have done this too. The politicians. They tell their favorite staffer. Favorite staffer's got a buddy. At such and such an outlet, and there you go.
Or they
So-
tell their wives, and as I don't know how
Yeah.
many people have seen the chart of politicians whose wives work at organizations, lobbyist groups, or in the media, and that in and of itself is you're basically feeding stuff to the media. Hey, I only told my wife, she's cleared to hear about it. Yeah, but your wife can't keep her mouth shut, so she told everybody in her sewing group, and then
Exactly.
they went live on CNN and MSNBC. But so what do you think about the politics and the backlash surrounding this? Because you have the Democrats invoking the War Powers Act, which I was just making the argument that the War Powers Act was not passed via amendment. Therefore, I think it's unconstitutional.
A lot of people, I think every president has done two things with the War Powers Act. They've said it was unconstitutional, and they've followed it. This president so far has followed the War Powers Act. There's no notification requirement in advance. There isn't one. War Powers Act requires a notification within a certain amount of days of taking military action like this. So, they're following it. That's why, Thomas Massey, I'm a big supporter of his, but in this one rare case, I think he's wrong. He's saying it's unconstitutional what the president did, but the Congress that he's part of passed the War Powers Act, and he hasn't violated it that I can tell so far. Number one. Number two, they tried to repeal it in Congresses that Massey's been in and failed. So they had their chance a couple of times to stop the War Powers Act. But even without the War Powers Act, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States has a responsibility to prevent an existential threat from harming Americans, especially here at home. And I have to make an assumption. My two questions that I said the president needed to have answered before he did this was, why does America have to do it?
Yep.
Why does it have to be Americans? Because of the way the situation was. And then why now? What's the threat to America? Not to our troops over there, but to us here in the United States. Is there a big enough threat? In my mind, it should be an existential threat, because you're basically becoming an offensive combatant. You've already done defensive work, because you have to defend your own troops that are in the area, most of which shouldn't even be there, by the way, in my opinion. But you have to defend them there, so you might as well help defend your ally from missile attacks while you're at it. I'm okay with that, considering the circumstances.
Seems we lost him.
Uh-oh. Oh, no. It looks like we might have lost Colonel Maness. All right. Well, hopefully we can get the Colonel back on and get the comms figured out. Hey, you heard it right here. I mean, that expert in the field, like 10 times over, knows all of his stuff. The amount of intricacy and the amount of detail in science, the physics of how to pull off a mission like this, and then the OPSEC under Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump, this was great. And as you heard him say it, as far as the deception, I can't. I guess the Trojan horse. Yeah, I think that's a great comparison, because this was a clear example of, look at my right hand while I jab you with the left hand. It looks like we got him back.
Well, my screen froze up, or you guys did on mine, so I just logged out and came back in. Where was I at? You lost me.
Just after, so we were just landing on the OPSEC and the OPSEC and the logistics, and we were going into political ramifications of the War Powers Act and
yeah.
And
So
Thomas Massey, which you and I both support. Yeah. Like, I'm a huge Thomas Massey fan.
This is one of the 1% of the times that I think Thomas is wrong. It's not unconstitutional, and he hasn't violated the War Powers Act. The president's actions, anyway, is what I was saying before it was up. And quite frankly, the Congress that he's a part of passed the War Powers Act, and they failed to repeal it while he was a member of these Congresses in the last few years. So they've had their chance, but that's beside the point. Even without the War Powers Act, the commander-in-chief has the responsibility, the duty, and the power to defend the nation without asking permission. Can you imagine Congress saying to the commander-in-chief on December 7th, 1941, hey, Mr. President, you tell those Navy guys that are getting schwacked out there by the Japanese, they're not allowed to fire on the Japanese until we declare war. What?
Yeah.
That's the situation that I believe the president probably answered the two questions that I was saying needed to be answered in my interviews. And that is, one, why America? Why do we have to do it? And two, why now? What's the threat to America, not to Israel? Look, this was Israel's war. We were being defensive, in defensive mode because we have troops there and we might as well defend our ally too. And I think that's okay. I was uncomfortable with it at first, but then I thought it through and I'm like, yeah, that's the right thing to do. But when they wanted us to come in, they have the capability to do this job. They have bunker buster weapons. They're just the smaller versions of them. It would probably take a week of sorties and many, many more weapons to get the job done, but they could have done it. All right. Mm-hmm. The other thing is the best way to attack a target like this and ensure that you were successful. There's really only one way. An Israeli Defense Force commando raid goes in on Fort Al and these underground targets, and they had the battle space prepared very, very effectively. So there's enough chaos and lack of response by the military and the IRGC in the country that in my mind, that's what I would have been recommended to the president to tell Prime Minister Netanyahu was do it on the ground. And you know why it's important? Not because it's cool or anything. They were all high risk operations. Okay, even the airstrike was. But the commando raid ensures you get people on the ground into the facility. You get eyes on the material. You destroy the equipment. And you have eyes on it, and you remove the material, and you get out. That's the only surefire way to know that you 100% are going to prevent Iran from getting a nuke. And remember, that's the goal. The president has articulated it many, many times.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was telling folks and getting yelled at online, no, this is one and done. The cartoon Fox News network was one and done, 2 bombs. We're not talking about boots on the ground. This is a small one-time thing. And you can go back and look at the clips from Fox News all weekend.
Yeah.
Brian Kilmeade even said at one point the B-2s and B-52s could be on board the Nimitz. I started calling him Cartoon Kilmeade. He earned that nickname then because that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. We shouldn't
not how you do it.
And our people will never stand for being led into war by a cartoon Fox News network that's making it silly, and the decision makers are watching that stuff. No, we're not going to stand for that. We're going to speak up and say that, wait a minute, have you thought about this? Especially those of us that have survived combat and are educated and experienced at great levels in this type of activity, in this profession and everything. It's our responsibility to ask the questions publicly that we hope President Trump is asking in private, because he has access to the classified. We do not. So those two questions, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. He got those answered. Unfortunately, the IDF raid plan, there was one, was leaked by our intelligence agencies, is what I was told, and it showed up in the New York Times. So that defeated the idea that I was talking about doing that. And more than likely, the president had the right classified information to answer those two questions, and he made the decision. But what happens when that happens, though? Two things happen. The wheel of war turns. And when that happens, Julian, it doesn't matter what the commander's intent is. When the wheel of war turns based on a decision or an action, the next sequel starts, and you don't know what the unintended consequences or the second and third order of consequences are going to be until you face it. And here's what happened. And this is why President Trump dropped an F-bomb on television this morning to a reporter out of frustration. The wheel turned when the president decided, all right, I'm going to help him. Well, even though his commander's intent is not to enter the war, it's just to attack the nuclear facilities. As a matter of fact, one of the team even said, we're not at war with Iran. We're at war with their nuclear capability. We are not interested in regime change. we're not interested in being this war. That's our only activity. That's great. That's the commander's intent I would expect, because I voted for this guy for that type of policy. But
peace through strength. I mean, that's
but the wheel, but exactly. But the wheel turned when he did that, and he became the commander in chief of an allied force, because now the Israelis are a protectorate of the United States.
Yep.
That's what happened. That I don't know that he realized that. And Benjamin Netanyahu, when he launched those fighters to respond to the violation of the ceasefire 7 minutes after it went into effect, the Iranians violated the ceasefire. Nobody knows the intent, but they did. But when Netanyahu was going to launch on him, just like he was the commander in chief of his own armed forces, but he's not anymore. And the commander in chief now is Donald Trump, and he had asked him, "Don't do that." Yeah. And he did it anyway. That's why Donald Trump was frustrated, I believe, this morning, to the point where he said they don't know what the fuck they're doing because they've been at it so long. And I'm sure he's right on that. But that's what happened. So now we are, whether we want to be in it and the commander's intent is or not, at that point, he's the commander in chief of the allied force. And Benjamin Netanyahu needs to recognize that and follow orders of the commander in chief, and he didn't. So he got upset. But in the meantime, the president is making a ceasefire deal, and the Iranians are firing back at us and saying, "Hey,
I'm getting the music." So it looks like we're at the I'm getting the music. So it looks like we're at the end of the segment. Colonel Rob Maness, I want to thank you for coming on, brother. I have very, very much appreciate it. You heard it here, folks, from an expert on the topic. All right, go check out the Rob Maness show. Go look up his work, see the stuff he's working on, support his work, tune into the Rob Maness show. You know, I tune into you all the time, brother. I watch your stuff all the time. Thank you for coming on. Yeah. We have our next segment. We have Anton Chaitkin. Yeah, Anton Chaitkin. I know I'm butchering that last name, to give us the contrary perspective on the next segment. Tune in. United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aciard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aciard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving Southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best-looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry. That's AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry.
Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GraniteGrok.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. We're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it, and we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for GraniteGrok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
All right, welcome back to Granite State Live. Make sure you tune in to Ram TV Live, catch all the replays, catch our other episodes. You know, we have plenty of information for you, plenty of content for you. Our next guest is going to be Anton Chaitkin. He's a historian and author of Who We Are, America's Fight for Universal Progress, From Franklin to Kennedy, Volume 2, 1830s to 1890s. His contention regarding, he's going to be a contrary perspective to me and General Rob Maness. He says, a half century ago, the Anglo-American establishment reversed policies that made America rich, powerful, and humane. All right. Thank you for coming on the show today, sir.
Well, thank you for having me here. We have a chance to reverse this globalist domination of our country because the voters don't want it, and the world needs to be looking back again at an America that leads with its industry and its program for peace in the world. That's what built us. Nationalism of that sort.
I agree with that. I'm an America First kind of guy. And when I say America First, I mean I don't give a damn about any other country in the world but America and American citizens. And to the degree that we engage with other countries in the world, it always needs to be with Americans and our country in mind, first and foremost.
Yeah, well, we've had this fight going on throughout our history, and I get to it in the 19th century in Volume 2 of Who We Are, between the economic nationalists, the founders and the builders of our country, versus the British Empire and people who thought like them and were on their side economically and in different ways were tied to the British Empire. Those are the two sides in our history. Our side built the industries. Eventually, you had London and Wall Street taking control at different times, and we have to look back at the situation in the Middle East to what's the background there. At the end of World War II, actually in 1943, Franklin Roosevelt went to Tehran during a war conference there, and he said in a report issued by his aide, Pat Hurley, that Iran should be a model for development out of poverty by allowing Iran to use its own resources, not to have British Petroleum control the oil there. It wouldn't cost American taxpayers anything to build up Iran into a modern country. That was our point of view, the American point of view. spread technology, spread wealth in that way. So what happened is you had the Dulles faction, the Anglo-American faction, that came in after FDR's death to control the CIA and to put the United States together with British intelligence, and they took over Iran to destroy the democratic government. After that government followed FDR's lead and nationalized their oil. This was a betrayal of American interests. The same faction, 10 years later, after that 1953 coup d'etat against Iran, the same Dulles faction, along with Lyman, I would say Lyman Lemnitzer in the Pentagon, this is the faction that overthrew our government by assassinating our president, John Kennedy. At the time of Kennedy's assassination, he was seeking, and had been for a couple of years, the worldwide development of nuclear power plants. This is following up on Eisenhower's program for Atoms for Peace. Kennedy wanted to see every country with the kind of power plants, especially focused on desalination, that you could have nuclear-powered development of fresh water as projects between the different rivals to settle these places down. Israel and her neighbors, Pakistan and India, the United States and the Soviet Union. Remember that the United States was the one that brought nuclear science and space travel and electricity itself, going back to Edison and his partners throughout the world. We brought these things into the world for the benefit of mankind. We shared these technologies with the rest of the world. The British Empire, the globalists, who have in the recent decades after they took down the Kennedy brothers, that globalist faction controls a combination of intelligence agencies against our interests. UK, the Israeli, and I would say a corrupted faction within the United States. What this attack by Israel and Ukraine was trying to accomplish was run not by those countries, but by this globalist faction. They did a deep strike into Russia against the bombers there. The Israelis launched a strike deep inside of Iran. They had drones parked in both countries. It was basically a common operation that had been long planned. And what were they going against? They wanted to disrupt Donald Trump's stated intention to try to get deals with countries that are otherwise our adversaries, to calm the situation down and build up stability between the U.S. and Russia, between the U.S. and China, between the U.S. and all of the actors in the Middle East. And these things were designed, these escalations were designed to terrify the world and try to disrupt what our voters want, which is to get out of this globalist nightmare, this globalist control, and go back to the construction of our economy that these globalists took down after the takeover, the 1960s assassinations. So we have a right to build up our industry. We have a right to have the different countries of the world have some stability and calm. How did we get radical Islam in the Middle East? This is a very well-known situation. This goes back to the British Great Game. First of all, we hired radical Islamists, right? Remember this? To fight the Soviet Union after the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. So we hired Osama bin Laden and some other people. We also did the same thing in Iraq.
And Iran and Yemen and Saudi Arabia and Syria.
That's right. It is a policy of the globalist faction to say that U.S. influence will not be tolerated in the world. What is our influence? We are the problem solvers. We had scientific farming. We had scientific agriculture. We built the steel mills in the United States based on are defying the British Empire and its rule. And, our problem solving was always done in a way that used the federal government for its legitimate purposes of aiding in the development of our country. You have to sort this out. The Agriculture Department is not there to meddle in the affairs of farmers. It's to try to give us the science that we need to enrich the soil and to proceed with the buildup of civilization. So this is our side. We're the improvers, or we used to be.
So I want to hit on that because you have here, and I quote, before Trump's second term, the majority of Americans support the core issues Donald Trump emphasized in both his presidential campaigns: the end of permanent wars and the establishment, restore the productive industry that the transatlantic elite robbed from America. Before Trump's second term, the usurpers set in motion a spiraling escalation of war. They lit a fire they hoped the next president couldn't extinguish to force his hand so that wherever or whatever his own real intentions may be, their quote-unquote globalism and forever wars would not be reversed. I 100% agree with that position. And I think it's funny because originally when I was handed the call sheet to look at where you're coming from, I was like, oh, all right, contrary perspective. I was expecting you to come at this more from the left, but you're coming at this from an economic nationalist and from Trump support, and I agree with that. As a matter of fact, I'm a big supporter of Thomas Massey. I'm a big supporter of the Abraham Accords and using economic interest to avoid war wherever possible. So, where do you think we went wrong with U.S. involvement in the Iran-Israel conflict as far as the strikes on nuclear facilities in the current presidency, and what backlash it may have?
I think that people have to have some courage here to get out of the party structure. To get out of looking at this as so-called liberals versus so-called conservatives or Republicans and Democrats.
I agree.
The party leadership in both parties under globalism supports the kind of permanent war situation that is debilitating to our country. We have to be able to look at what is this establishment. First of all, there's an international banking structure. A lot of it's based offshore. And this overlaps with financial centers in London and New York. And this is an illegitimate power. They direct credit to a above quadrillion-dollar level derivatives and other speculative bubble. And they try to prevent the credit in the United States going into our productive enterprises. Their whole system is based on cheap labor. This faction is the one, as an economic faction, as an imperial faction, that has saddled us with this problem in Latin America and the border problem. You can't solve that problem by simply saying we're going to close the border. What about all these millions of people that are being pushed towards our border? You have to say, why is this international system, this globalist system, these bankers and these anti-development, I guess you call them liberals, but it's not the same thing as FDR or Kennedy. Why do they want to have Central America, Mexico, and South America live in poverty, live in chaos? Well, one thing is that the banks, these offshore banks, and the biggest international Anglo-American banks like HSBC control the narcotics cartels. They launder their money. 2012 Senate report by Senator Levin established that HSBC was the master of the finance of these cartels. That means including the gangs that have come up into our country from Latin America. You want to shut that down? You want to have Latin America not be a problem for us? Then let us have the kind of progress in those countries with high wage jobs, with American cooperation with Mexico, with Brazil, with Argentina, to get modern times in those countries. Why should they be forced to flee their countries to come here? Why should we tolerate our system, so-called, it's not our system, but these bankers' system, forbidding the kind of high-wage industries that we built up originally in our country as well? We want to do right by those countries. That's what America's all about. So this is the problem that we confront. The United States and every other country in the world have a harmony of interests. That's also true within our country, between most people. If you put forward a program now to a governmental program for the upcoming elections or for the next presidential elections that said we're going to have massive growth of modern infrastructure, modern steel mills, nuclear power plants, really revive the deep space program. We're going to have an infrastructure bank, a federal infrastructure bank to invest in these kinds of projects. We're going to have tariffs that will be imposed in a way that's sensible, that protects our interests, and we think other countries have the same right to do that. If the United States pursues that kind of massive increase in its strength and power, as we did in the past, that was Abraham Lincoln's program, then the United States will restore its influence in the world. And you have to face some of this history. We haven't always done right. We didn't do right by the Indians, but we didn't have to do the massacres and this theft of land of agricultural communities. This isn't just building railroads. You had people, starting with the slave owners, trying to take over land of settled and progressive people like the Cherokees. That was a mistake. That was not living up to our ideals. But you have to be able to celebrate the ideals of the American Revolution as something that profoundly moved the world forward. Our accomplishments were massive and aided the world's development. So that's the basis for looking at the present situation. What's the difference between us and the globalists? We have this profound difference with the British Empire and their philosophy. Our revolution was a huge philosophical fight. We believed, and I think Benjamin Franklin is the greatest example of this, we believed in improvement. That is, we're on this earth to improve the conditions of human beings because we have an idea of what it means to be a human being. We are different from animals in that we improve our work by discoveries and inventions. The British Empire has the philosophy that the world has only fixed and limited resources. This is completely false. You develop land, you make it richer by improving the soil. You have to understand the soil chemistry. You have to add nitrogen and other things. You have to do scientific things like rotating crops. Coal and oil and of course uranium were not resources until we developed the science and the skills to use these things. They've always been here, right? So there are infinite resources. You can't use the same thing forever. You're going to run out of it. You can't just chop trees down for fuel forever. You've got to go on to a higher level, to more intense energy. But don't tell me that we are like some beasts that will use up resources and then go extinct. That's not true. When we want to have a thriving human race, human population, and a thriving America both, we have to look to an increase of the population and an increase in the use of energy, intense energy. We can't do that with windmills. And the people, look at Africa. the 500 million people in Africa do not have electricity.
I 100% agree. I've always said that the world's problems can be solved largely through economic development and prosperity. One of the biggest contentions I've always had with the GOP, I'm a lifetime Republican, from a family of lifetime Republicans, literally all the way back to slavery. I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican, so I believe in holding both sides of the aisle accountable as Frederick Douglass did. And one of the things I've always had a contention with is this idea where the right, who is supposed to believe in limited government, and we're supposed to believe in growth, not just economically, but growth for the average individual, growth culturally, growth at a political level as well. And I normally criticize from the political perspective of why are we always talking about skimming the margins electorally in order to win an election rather than having a growth mindset of going after different demographics in order who might align with us economically. Because that's why people vote for Republicans, is for economic reasons, foreign policy reasons, safe communities, stuff like that. It's not the social issues that we typically make the top of the ticket issue for our party. And when we look at economically, I'm looking at the immigration issue, as you brought up. I see a lot of the arguments for this unfettered low-wage immigration almost intellectually akin to slavery. Like, you're telling me we need a permanent underclass of people imported into the United States at low-wage labor because Americans don't want to do the jobs? What happened to the cost of living? Why did it skyrocket? Government intervention in industry to create monopolies and cartels in the first place.
But we have to have the courage of our philosophy and our religion. And that is, we said, the best of us said, that all men, God created all men, that all men are created equal, and that we are of one blood in this world. So all men are literally brothers in that sense. Amen. So look at Frederick Douglass as a good example of this. First of all, he's a protectionist. He fought against the free trade faction. And he also was a patriot, but criticized the white racism that prevented black people from working as Americans. But he recruited people into the U.S. Army to help Lincoln to win the Civil War and protect and preserve our Union. A crucial thing about Frederick Douglass is that he believed that black people and white people in every part of the human race has the right to the use of everything that mankind has invented and discovered and produced as art and literature. That the people that were freed from slavery should not just be settling for, some lower level trade education, but that they had a right to say that classical music, for example, of Beethoven, is the property of, it's our property. We are human. We're fully human. We have the right to understand the world and understand the highest sciences. And so don't say that those things are white. That's insane. The issue is, what does it mean to be human and to be in the image of God? That idea has been betrayed by the globalists and by the people who maintain that war is the natural condition of mankind. No, our best leaders were always anti-war, and they look at Lincoln in the period before the Civil War. He was in Congress, and in 1846, the slave owners were in control of the U.S. government. They were really a part of the British Empire. They were exporting their cotton to England, and they wanted to keep us from industrializing. So the most radical of them devised a program for spreading slavery to Latin America and to the West, and to try to set up a slave empire that would overwhelm our country and break up our republic. That started with the war against Mexico.
Yep.
Lincoln was in Congress, and he said, this is a fraud. These people are traitors. They're misusing our government. And he risked his career by telling the truth that the U.S. President Polk was a liar about this invasion. Mexico didn't invade us. We had common interests with Mexico. We shouldn't have invaded them. We could have bargained with them for California, but that's a different issue. This was done against U.S. interests and really as treason. He lost his position in Congress. It was unpopular. So a decade later, when he was raised by the nationalists in Philadelphia and elsewhere to be the president, he was proven right. This same faction that made war on Mexico turned around and made war against the United States of America. Yep. And that's the same thing that you have with this Dulles faction. That they are at war with our country. They go back again and again. You see this thing coming up. You know, the Dulles brothers, Alan and John Foster Dulles, worked for a law firm called Sullivan and Cromwell. And in the 1930s, they represented the four principal banks in Wall Street, and John Foster Dulles went to Berlin to make an arrangement with Hitler to prop up the new Hitler regime and make sure they had credit resources to do that. Yep. That the Bank of England faction in the pro-fascist faction in England was part of this. My father, Jacob Chaitkin, was a lawyer in New York City, and he sued the banks in New York, literally the companies that were jointly owned between the New York bankers and the Hitler regime. One of those was called the North German Lloyd Shipping Company. They were swindling American bondholders, and they said, you have to, this private company, jointly owned by Wall Street, British interests, and Hitler, that private company should not pay their debts to American bondholders. My father said, this is a swindle. The money's going to the Hitler government to make war. And the lawyer for the Nazi company was John Foster Dulles, appeared in New York Municipal Court against my father. My father won case after case on that. He was a leader of the boycott against Nazi Germany. So who are these Dulles brothers? What's that?
We're starting to get the music to go into the next segment.
So okay.
I'd like to have you come back on to discuss that, but please tell the viewers where they can find your book.
Yeah, this is the second volume. I'm working on the 20th century. This is who we are. It's on Amazon. It's a Kindle and paperback version. 600 pages, 48 pages of picture. And you can have fun with this. It's all sourced. It's all footnoted. And the historians representing the globalists have tried to completely bury American progress. Who made the industries? What projects were they? How did we do this? And what is that enemy of ours that tried to stop us?
All right. You heard it first here on Granite State Live. This is our guest, Anton Chaitkin. He is a historian and author of Who We Are, America's Fight for Universal Progress, From Franklin to Kennedy, Volume 2. Please go buy his book on Amazon. Tune in for the next segment. We're going to have our final guest for a day, Nils Grevillius. I know I'm butchering that last name, but stay tuned. Come in next segment. Give us a couple moments. We'll be right back with you. United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aciard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aciard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving Southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry. That's AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry.
Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GraniteGrok.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it. And we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for GraniteGrok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
All right, welcome back to Granite State Live again. I'm going to keep saying it. Go check out Ram TV Live. See all the episodes from my podcast, Blue Collar Intellectual Podcast, and Granite State Live, where you can rewatch episodes, share them with your friends. And if you don't like it, keep it to yourself. But up next, I have Nils Grevillius, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Los Angeles-based private investigator, was the first to license as a private detective in 1992, got his start as a soldier conducting clandestine security, border, and counterinsurgency operations in the Pacific, Mediterranean, and Latin America, and clandestine operations for in various nations in the private sector as well. He was an agent with the Pinkerton organization and heads right now his own agency, Grevillius Detective Services. He's here to discuss the assassination of State Senator Melissa Hortman in Minnesota and her husband, and the wounded State Senator John Hoffman and his wife by 57-year-old Vance Luther Bolter. Thank you, sir, for coming on.
It's my sincere pleasure. I'm pleased to meet you.
Thank you. So what can you tell us about this case?
Well, it seems to break the mold in several ways. There are conflicting ideas as to political motive based on things found at the crime scene, like the No Kings flyers in the man's car, and a letter in which Bolter claims that Tim Waltz ordered him to conduct a whole series of assassinations.
Wow. Wow, that's stark.
It's incredibly dark, and when I look at the background of this man, he went pretty consistently through jobs, mostly in food service and that sort of thing in the northern Midwest. He spent a lot of time overseas in Africa, doing things related to some sort of ministry, but he has almost zero history of irrational aggression right up until he murdered Ms. Horton and her husband and shot the Hoffmans. And it suggests to me a sudden break with reality, not a slow decline. He was able to maintain a license to operate a security company in the United States, and we can presume that he passed NICS checks in order to obtain firearms without any issue. He claims in some of his material that he was trained by military and law enforcement. Well, almost anybody who goes to a private range for training is going to be trained by former military and law enforcement. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this man is severely mentally ill. And there's an excellent possibility that what has afflicted him is cannabis psychosis.
Okay.
Because of the sudden onset of this. The cannabis that is presently marketed in the United States is very high grade, high concentration of THC, and the vape product, the synthetic, is probably even more dangerous for anybody prone to schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. Because when I analyze the communications that are in the letter about Governor Waltz ordering him to assassinate Senator Klobuchar and these other people, the only thing that makes sense is actual organic insanity. And when I say organic insanity, I mean brain chemistry rather than something like a personality disorder. When we look at Ralph, the second attempted assassin of President Trump, he obviously has a personality disorder. He's a narcissist. He made a lot of statements politically about whom he hated and whom he did not, and that sort of thing. He has an obvious, identifiable political motive, just as Oswald did and Sirhan did. But this man, Bolter, his decline is sudden, and it suggests to me cannabis psychosis and or bipolar disorder. I don't see anything to suggest that he's an alcoholic or that he's the user of hard drugs. I can say for certain that the use of cocaine or heroin or fentanyl will make you do odd things, but it won't render you organically insane. A man could be high on heroin all the time and never lose control of his faculties other than nodding off and being unable to care for himself or potentially overdosing, but it's not going to cause organic brain disorder like this. Alcohol can cause some odd disorders, but that's only during the detox, when a man might experience delirium tremens. So I'm thinking cannabis psychosis, and I'm seeing a lot of cannabis psychosis here in California, where we've taken the step of making cannabis absolutely legal for recreational use. In the last 12 months, I've handled 3 missing persons cases involving young people who've had a complete break with reality as the result of cannabis psychosis. And I can say last summer, it is my belief that the noted author, the man who wrote Generation Kill, Evan Wright, was in the throes of cannabis psychosis when he took his own life in July of last year.
So this has got to be habitual, consistent use of very, very high grade potent cannabis. I know the popular thing with the kids these days is dabs, which is using cannabis oil concentrate, and usually through a form of vaping, or dripping it on top of cannabis that they're smoking, either in a joint or a bowl or a bong, some sort of usage in that manner. But I don't think I've ever seen a cannabis psychosis get to this degree. I mean, I've seen people high before, and most people they get high, and they come down from it, they're normal the same way they were before. The only time I've ever seen any sort of break with reality is people or mood disorders or psychotic disorders relating to cannabis is consistent habitual use over a very long period of time to where it alters your brain chemistry.
I would agree with you. I had a case a year and a half ago involving a young lady, a graduate student here in Los Angeles, who was smoking high-grade cannabis and had never had what you would call a substance abuse history, alcoholism, cocaine, any of that, but she was a regular user of cannabis and believed, because it is organic, that it was safe to use. And that's what a lot of the promotional material for recreational cannabis says, and medical cannabis. She wandered off into traffic, left her house, and just she was run over by a car in another county and hospitalized as a Jane Doe. And it took me 2 weeks to find her. Okay. And this was a woman with zero history of this sort of thing, 27 years old. And I can say that once somebody crosses over into paranoid schizophrenia, it can be treated, but they're never not schizophrenic again.
Okay. Because I will say I dabbled when I was a teenager, and I can remember back in the day, it was the highest potency you would see of cannabis would be around 40-something%, but the cannabis that's on the market now is upwards of 90% in some cases. So we're talking apples and oranges here. You're talking the strongest form of the substance taken in large quantities, and when you look at no matter what you're drinking or what you're smoking or what you're using in large quantities in very, very high, I want to say high potency forms, can have drastic effects on the mental ability of the individual. But what are some of the markers that you typically see with this type of action of political assassination or paranoid schizophrenics or something like this?
Well, there's some indicia that James Hinckley Jr., the man who attempted to assassinate President Reagan, was in a break with reality. I don't know that he had a history of cannabis, but he was definitely psychotic at the time that he attempted to murder President Reagan. And again, that's organic brain chemistry. The best way for me to characterize schizophrenia is in a figurative way. What if the normal man is consistently measuring himself in a mirror, a theoretical mirror in his mind? He's reflecting in that mirror. And maybe he sees something, maybe he doesn't see something, and that sort of thing. Then he starts using high-grade cannabis, and not everybody is prone to this. Please understand. To be schizophrenic, is to have too many mirrors to figuratively reflect in. Too many for the man reflecting to choose which of the reflections is the closest or the truest. And then when that man who's schizophrenic or prone to schizophrenia starts smoking high-grade cannabis, it's as if he's locked himself into a labyrinth and thrown the key away, where it's a wilderness of funhouse mirrors, each one distorting him in a different way, where he cannot select anything that looks remotely normal and ultimately is cornered. That's the only thing I can relate it to. It's not like the psychosis of methamphetamine, where you are inducing a temporary bipolar condition by using methamphetamine, where men and women alike become hypersexual and lose the ability to make good choices with bedmates. When you see these news reports of some attractive and seemingly normal school teacher engaging in a sexual relationship with a 13-year-old boy, almost always it involves bipolar disorder and or methamphetamine. They just completely lose the ability to make a good choice and can't switch it off.
Damn, I hadn't explored that. I honestly hadn't explored that. I was actually just digging. I'm in the process of writing an article because this is a growing trend in society right now. The seemingly the attractive female teacher having relationships with young men, and I've explored it from the intersexual dynamics of regardless of the age, men are still typically the person going after the female. So there's, I want to say, less of the stigma on the male part. And of course, as men, we all had that hot teacher when we were in school. So the go-to response that you hear from dads is, well, way to go, son. And there's, of course, a plethora of popular media that, what's the old rock song, Hot for Teacher, right? There's a plethora of media that pushes this idea that the young boy is not a victim. But I hadn't explored the bipolar disorder and methamphetamines and the presence of mental inabilities that the teacher may be going through. I'm definitely going to have to take a look at that. But when we're looking at the assassination, we see this. These psychotic breaks. Is there an investigation exploring his different claims, or are they writing it off as the ramblings of a madman?
I'm going to say the latter. I don't think that anybody is taking this stuff about Governor Walz seriously, nor should they. I don't like Governor Walz. I didn't vote for Governor Walz. But nor do I think that he would order this man Bolter to assassinate anyone.
Agreed.
He might tell him to go through a rock through somebody's front window, and if Bolter was wearing purple hair and a keffiyeh when he shot some people, there might be other people making T-shirts and celebrating him, raising money for his defense. But like we're seeing with Luigi Mangione. But no, I don't think there's any credibility to the letter that Bolter wrote, which is the best evidence that he has had a sudden break with reality and become deadly. I would be looking at his drug use, alcohol use, if any. I would be analyzing his communications and his communications with his wife and other people, that sort of thing. I don't think that there is a political motive here. I think that he dressed it up as politics because in the context of his mental break, he thought he was on some sort of mission from Governor Walz. I doubt that he wrote this letter as an alibi to try to get off. Son of Sam Berkowitz created this whole persona that he was paranoid schizophrenic and a dog was talking to him. No, Berkowitz was an MDSO sex killer who was intelligent enough to create his own alibi, wherein he pretends to be, paranoid schizophrenic. There's nothing to it. It's completely made up by Berkowitz.
I saw the claims and I'm like, look, I'm not a fan of Governor Tim Walz at all, but I think that's outlandish, and I think at worst, the guy probably took offhand comments about disagreements with certain politicians and wrote them into his alternate reality in his head as missions for him to go and execute on his own time. Which is where I always critique people who bring up these issues. Don't delve into the conspiracy theories that, it's the only conspiracy theory that I've even remotely humored is the whole Hillary Clinton thing, where it's like everybody that's about to come out with something bad. Yeah, it's like everyone who's about to come out with some damning information about you and Bill Clinton happens to die in some mysterious manner right before testifying. That just sounds outlandish. But when we're looking at something like this, I think, and more towards the Luigi, I can't say his last name properly, Mangione. Okay, Luigi Mangione. I think the mirror got put up to society at that point, and while I have a disdain for a lot of corporations and big pharma and stuff like that, unfortunately, I saw a lot of people praising his act as something to be lauded, and I don't see how, when they're looking at that case specifically, because I'm sure you have knowledge on it, seeing as you mentioned it, was he going through a psychotic break, or was this just premeditated, planned, this is what I'm going to do, political motivation?
It appears to be politically motivated, premeditated murder. And I will point out that he didn't take a shot at anybody who created any of the laws that the man he murdered has to or had to adhere to in providing health insurance coverage in this country. And Mangione was not covered in any way by that man's company. The other thing that was deeply troubling to me was once Mangione was named as the only suspect, there was a lot of material quite suddenly in X and other social media, not just lauding Mangione, but explaining his motive immediately as if they all knew he was going to do it or why he would do it.
That's disturbing.
It is, and it's the same thing with this Elias Rodriguez character who murdered the two Israeli embassy staff members, heavily involved in politics with an obvious political motive, who thinks he's heroic for what he has done. He shamed his family. His father's an Army National Guard veteran, and by all accounts, a good government Democrat from Chicago. I might not agree with his father politically. I haven't found anything dishonorable about the Rodriguez family other than Elias. If I were in the Bureau, I would be analyzing every device, every media account, everybody that these guys met with. It looks unmistakably like the sort of schoolhouse material we had in the Army in counterintelligence when we were studying low-intensity conflict and counterinsurgency. These are the beginning notes in a communist insurgency.
Just a moment, because I know we're getting to the bottom of the hour. I want to see if we can have you on. Can we have him on for another 5? All right. We can have you on for another 5. I'd like you to go into that a little bit deeper.
Well, back in the 70s, all over Europe, there were various communist insurgency groups like Baader Meinhof, Red Brigades, Red Army Faction, ETA, Spanish Militar, the Irish Republican Army. A lot of people don't know that the IRA provisionals were hardcore Marxist-Leninists.
Oh,
they
yes,
trained
they were.
in Libya. in Iraq, in North Korea, that sort of thing. And they did joint operations. Japanese Red Army did a big mass murder in Israel on behalf of Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. So in a communist insurgency, what they'll do is they will select targets and use conventional media as their social media. They get social media cred for an assassination, for a bombing, for a kidnapping, that sort of thing. And then we can look at the Ku Klux Klan, these men in their Portland tuxedos with their purple hair and their masks, where that it only occurs in cities where they'll be protected from being identified by the local power structure, which tells me that in Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles, Oakland, San Francisco, New York, Boston, whatever, all of these people are known to the local political people, and they rarely get charged with any crime at all. They don't release the booking photos or tell you whom these people work for. Well, here in Los Angeles, it's recently been disclosed that NGO money that's supposed to be helping poor, campesinos find housing in Los Angeles is funding the Marxist insurgency. The NGO money is going out to the street troops. And I call them the Ku Klux Klan. Why did the Klan mask up? So that nobody would know who they were. And it's a cognizance of criminal intent is what it is. If I wear a mask...
I actually found it comical. I actually found it comical that they were claiming that the ICE agents were covering their faces because they didn't want anyone to know who they are. And I'm like, you're saying this while they're covering their faces so nobody knows who they are, so they can go and commit crimes and destroy communities and hold people hostage in their own communities with impunity.
There is very little left-wing organization of this sort without taxpayer dollars, though. It comes right out of my pocket, right out of your pocket, and into theirs. I don't think Bolter is of this ilk, though. But Elias and Mangione and Routh certainly appear to be men like this. And the one who's still a cipher is Crooks. Not enough is known about Crooks. And I think the Bureau has been notoriously closed-mouthed about it. I think there are a lot of things about this man that they just don't want people to see or know, like the transvestite in Nashville that shot up the Christian school. They don't want you to know. They don't want you to see it. They want to hold on to the power over that, and they want to reward the people who reward them.
We're seeing and we've seen an uptick in politically motivated shootings, violence, and stuff. And it seems to always go back to these radical communists, Marxists, and like you just said, the Ku Klux Klan. I think that's a fantastic moniker. And I think we're getting to this point in society, and I have said the social media in the I call it the algorithmic abyss, where you can log online and whatever you search for, you get 10, 20, 30, 40x of whatever you search for, because the algorithm wants you to keep clicking and wants you to keep scrolling. So if you want to go down the rabbit hole of how much anti-white racism there is in America, or how much anti-black racism, or how much corruption, there's an endless supply of conspiracy theories ready to supply you with your marching orders to go out and do absolutely obscene things if you don't have a high enough IQ or enough self-restraint to step back and realize that online is not reality. And unfortunately, you have far too many influencers, politicians, pundits, and bad actors who are willing to take advantage of any situation at any given point in time.
I agree with you. And this is a hydra. Let me be perfectly clear. Acorn became Occupy Wall Street, became Black Lives Matter, became Justice for Palestine, became blah, 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 blah. It's all the same guys. And it's apartheid as hell. 99% of them are bourgeoisie, white Marxists. A plurality of them are Ashkenazi Jewish kids from wealthy families. And they operate with complete impunity. You remember the two lawyers who firebombed the police in New York City in 2020? They barely got a slap on the wrist. If they could have given them less, they would have.
Hell yeah, the Weather
that's-
Underground getting elected to office decades later after all the stuff they did. It's amazing to me.
Yeah, yeah. The Marxists have done a good job of whitewashing, if you will, their own history, and the news media, even the conventional media, is happy to drive their getaway car at every opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw it with the shooting of Steve, the shooting up of the GOP baseball game. Was that almost a decade ago now? Now I feel like I'm getting old.
It was about 8 years ago now. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's this trend towards violence and it's trends toward get the goal, the proletariat revolution at any means necessary. Being the destructive force in the United States. I got to thank you for coming on. Where can people find you?
Well, I'm on X, formerly Twitter, at Detective Nils, and that's spelled Nils, like the plural of nothing. Lots of nothing. I've got a few cheesy crime novels for sale up on Amazon. And in about a year, my professional memoir, The Last Lawman, will be released by Post Hill Press.
All right. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. We're definitely going to have you come back as a subject matter expert and dig a little bit deeper in this. Hopefully we can give you a little bit more time next time. And because this has just been fantastic. I'm like, my mind is blown. So thank you for coming on. Again, this is Nils Grevillius, Los Angeles-based private investigator, Grevillius Detective Services. Go find him on X, follow him on social media, pick up his books on Amazon, and look out for that upcoming novel, that upcoming memoir, The Last Lawman. Again, thank you everybody for tuning in to Ram TV Live, Granite State Live for this episode. Next week, Keith Hansen will be back, my co-pilot, my brother from another mother, and we will be going over the latest news here in the United States and here in New Hampshire. Thank you for tuning in. Again, get my podcast, get a copy of my book, United We Stand, A Marines Fight. Get rid of the tumultuous political dialogue out there. Protect yourself from the algorithmic abyss. Get outside, touch some grass, get active in your local community, get active in your local community, get active in your local community. It's a republic if we can keep it. And like Reagan said, we didn't pass it to our children in the womb. You got to actively teach it every day. Thank you. Have a good night. God bless. See you next week.